The yellow measuring tape stretched across my living room bay window as Rachel held one end against the original 1920s crown molding, her notebook balanced in her free hand. Her 4-year-old twins, Madison and Mason, raced through my carefully restored hallways, claiming bedrooms for their imminent takeover. "Emma, you have to see this is the practical solution," Rachel said without looking up from her curtain calculations. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, that gorgeous kitchen. It's completely wasted on just you with your little weekend projects. My little weekend projects included 18 months of painstaking restoration work on this 1920s craftsman house. But Rachel saw my commitment to historical preservation as proof I didn't understand real estate's true purpose. Derek, my brother-in-law, emerged from the dining room with his measuring tape and confident expression. "The twins desperately need a proper backyard, and honestly, Emma, maintaining a place this size must be overwhelming for someone in your position." My position, apparently, was that of a single woman whose life could be reorganized to accommodate their needs. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Mom gushed from my restored stickly sofa, clutching Dad's arm. "Rachel just announced the 3rd pregnancy, and Emma can move into that adorable apartment complex near her work." The apartment complex I'd lived in before buying this house. The place where I'd worked 2 jobs and eaten ramen to save for a down payment, while Rachel planned her $15,000 wedding to Derek, whose trust fund made financial struggles abstract. 3 children need so much more space than 1 person, Aunt Carol agreed from the window seat I'd spent 6 weeks rebuilding. "Emma, you're still young enough to start fresh somewhere more suitable." I was 29 with a master's degree in historical preservation and a restoration consulting business. This house wasn't just my residence. It was my laboratory, sanctuary, and carefully planned investment. "This neighborhood is absolutely perfect for raising children," Rachel continued with authority. "Excellent schools, family-friendly community, active HOA that maintains property values. These are benefits Emma simply can't appreciate." Madison tugged on my vintage cardigan. "Aunt Emma, can we paint my new room bubblegum pink? And I want navy blue with glow-in-the-dark stars," Mason declared. Their innocent excitement cut deeper than Rachel's dismissal. These children were planning to inhabit the space I'd dreamed of and restored with my own hands. "We'll need to move quickly," Derek announced, pulling up real estate apps. "I've identified several 1-bedroom apartments in Emma's price range. Nothing fancy but appropriate for her lifestyle." My lifestyle of working 60-hour weeks, hand-refinishing floors on weekends, and researching historical paint colors to ensure architectural accuracy. Clearly inferior to their lifestyle of inherited wealth and reproductive success. Dad nodded approvingly. "Emma's always been adaptable. She'll understand this benefits the whole family." What benefited the family apparently was redistributing resources so those with the greatest need received the most space, regardless of legal ownership. "I've already spoken with Susan Chin from the HOA, Rachel announced proudly. "She's thrilled about having a proper family in this house. She mentioned that while Emma seems pleasant, the neighborhood really flourishes when family homes actually house families." Susan Chin, HOA president and my neighbor. The woman I'd collaborated with for months to get approval for my historically accurate exterior paint restoration. The woman who'd complimented my heritage garden reconstruction last weekend. "What specifically did Susan tell you?" I asked quietly. "Standard community planning principles," Rachel waved dismissively. "The neighborhood association encourages family-friendly housing. Single residents are fine temporarily, but established families take priority for long-term community development." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the HOA bylaws I'd studied before purchasing. "Rachel, could you show me which bylaw grants families priority over existing homeowners?" "Emma, don't get bogged down in technicalities. This isn't about legal minutiae, it's about common sense. 3 growing children versus 1 woman who travels for conferences half the month." My conferences were client meetings for historic preservation projects that paid enough to purchase this house in cash. But Rachel had never investigated what I actually accomplished. "Besides," Derek added confidently, "we can offer fair market value minus renovation costs. This place needs updating. That antiquated kitchen, those obsolete fixtures, all this original detailing that just accumulates dust." The antiquated kitchen featured restored 1920s cabinetry I'd spent 10 months refinishing. The obsolete fixtures, were period-appropriate pieces I'd sourced from architectural salvage companies. The dust-accumulating detailing was hand-carved craftsman woodwork that increased property value by 40%. The twins absolutely love the backyard, Mom observed warmly. Emma, you barely utilized that outdoor space. I barely utilized it because I spent weekends restoring the original pergola, researching period-appropriate plantings, and rebuilding the stone pathway previous owners had covered with concrete. It's settled then, Rachel announced. We'll start paperwork this week. Derek's attorney can handle the transfer. She turned to address me with patronizing sympathy. Emma, apartment living will be liberating. No maintenance, no yard work, more time for your consulting hobby. Plus the twins will visit constantly. My consulting hobby that generated enough revenue to purchase this house without financing. Shouldn't we consider Emma's perspective? Asked my cousin Jenny, the only family member who'd remained silent. Emma understands family obligations take precedence, Dad answered confidently. She's always been practical when family welfare is involved. Practical apparently meant surrendering my life's work so Rachel could avoid housing the children she'd planned without ensuring adequate space. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan Chin. Emma, please call immediately. Urgent HOA matter concerning your property. I excused myself to the kitchen and dialed Susan's number. Emma, thank God. Susan's voice carried professional concern. I just had the most bizarre conversation with someone claiming to be your sister. She insisted you're transferring ownership to accommodate her family's housing requirements. That's evolving. What exactly did she tell you? She claimed I'd confirmed HOA policies that prioritize families over single residents. Emma, we have absolutely no such policies. Property ownership is property ownership, period. I glanced toward the living room where Rachel demonstrated furniture arrangement to Madison while Derek sketched wall removal plans. She also described renovation plans requiring architectural review approval, Susan continued. Removing original walls, modernizing historical features, updating landscaping. Emma, those would violate our historical preservation covenants. The covenants I'd helped draft as an HOA board member last year. Susan, if someone other than the legal owner attempted to submit HOA applications, what would happen? That would constitute fraud. All applications require verified ownership proof. What? Is someone attempting unauthorized changes to your property? Through the doorway, I watched Derek measuring the load-bearing wall he intended to demolish for his open-concept family space. Potentially. Could you come clarify HOA policies for my family? They've developed significant misunderstandings. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Emma, if someone's misrepresenting policies or attempting unauthorized modifications, the board must address this immediately. I returned to find Rachel sketching floor plans, relocating my furniture for her family's needs. Derek was photographing wall joints for his contractor. Rachel, I spoke with Susan Chin about HOA policies. She looked up brightly. Wonderful. Did she confirm the family housing guidelines? She's coming over to clarify policies with everyone. Should arrive in 15 minutes. Derek paused his photography. Is there a problem? I thought the HOA was cooperative. I told you Susan supports families. I may have oversimplified our conversation. Dad frowned. Rachel, did you get proper authorization for these modification plans? Dad, it's not like Emma's going to create obstacles. She understands this makes sense for everyone. The doorbell rang precisely at 15 minutes. Susan Chin stood on my porch in her business suit, holding an official portfolio and wearing her serious HOA enforcement expression. Good afternoon, she greeted professionally. I'm Susan Chin, president of the Maplewood Historical District HOA. I understand there's been confusion about our policies. Rachel stepped forward confidently. Susan. Perfect timing. We were finalizing the family housing transition we discussed. Susan remained professionally neutral. Ma'am, I need to clarify something immediately. We have no family housing transition policies. Property ownership in this district is governed exclusively by individual deeds and historical preservation covenants. The room fell silent except for the twins' continued bedroom planning upstairs. But you mentioned the neighborhood benefits from established families, Rachel insisted, confidence wavering. I said children are welcome, which is different from claiming families have legal priority over existing owners. Susan opened her portfolio, extracting formal documents. I'm here to address serious misunderstanding about ownership rights and modification approval processes. He turned to Derek. Sir, I understand you're planning structural modifications. Do you possess ownership documentation authorizing such changes? Derek looked confused. Not exactly, but Emma's transferring ownership to accommodate our family's needs. I see. And Ms. Thompson, have you initiated any ownership transfer procedures? Every eye focused on me. No, I haven't. Susan nodded professionally. Then any renovation plans require explicit written permission from the current legal owner, who according to county records is Emma Thompson, who purchased this property in March 2023. She handed Rachel official documents. These are our historical preservation guidelines governing all modifications. Removing original walls, updating period features, or altering landscape elements requires architectural review approval and verified owner consent. Rachel scanned the documentation, confidence evaporating. But surely family circumstances. Family circumstances don't override property law or HOA covenants, Susan replied firmly. The legal owner is Emma Thompson. Any modifications require her explicit written consent and full architectural review approval. Mom found her voice. Susan, this is just a family matter. We're working out housing arrangements. From the HOA's perspective, this involves property rights and preservation compliance. We don't mediate family decisions, but we enforce property rights and architectural standards. Susan addressed me directly. Emma, as verified legal owner, anyone attempting unauthorized modifications would violate both HOA covenants and county regulations. Derek set down his measuring tape. I think there's been a misunderstanding about timeline. What kind of misunderstanding? Susan asked. We assumed Emma had committed to transferring ownership. We were just planning ahead. Susan consulted her documentation. Planning modifications for property you don't own violates local ordinances. I hope you haven't submitted permit applications. Rachel's face went pale. Permit applications? For wall removal, electrical updates, plumbing modifications. The changes you described would require comprehensive permits, architectural review and owner authorization. We were just measuring, Derek said quickly. Fortunate. Because submitting applications for property you don't own would constitute fraud. Dad cleared his throat. Susan, surely this is simple family miscommunication. No one intended legal violations. I'm confident that's true. However, the HOA takes property rights seriously. We've seen family disputes result in unauthorized modifications violating preservation standards. She extracted another document. This is the deed for 1247 Maplewood Drive, purchased by Emma Thompson for $385,000 in March 2023. Complete cash purchase with no liens. Mom stared at the documentation. Emma purchased this house entirely with cash? Yes. One of the largest cash transactions in our neighborhood during 2023. Rachel studied the deed. Emma, how did you afford this without financing? My historical preservation consulting has been financially successful, I replied quietly. Susan nodded approvingly. Emma's work on heritage properties has been exceptional. Her consultation on the Morrison Victorian restoration was featured in Historical Preservation Quarterly. You were featured in a magazine? Aunt Carol asked. Several magazines. Emma's expertise in 1920s craftsman restoration is highly sought after. Her improvements here have significantly increased neighborhood values. Derek looked around with dawning understanding. Emma, you're not just living here. You're professionally restoring this house. Correct. The kitchen restoration, fixture preservation, landscape archaeology, all professional-level preservation work. Susan checked her watch. I need to return to the office, but let me be clear about HOA policies. This property belongs to Emma Thompson. Any modifications require her written consent, architectural review approval and proper permitting. No exceptions. She handed business cards to Derek and Rachel. If you're interested in purchasing property in our district, I'd be happy to provide information about current listings. We have several family-friendly homes available. After Susan's departure, uncomfortable silence filled the room. The twins had wandered outside, leaving adults to process the reversal of their assumptions. Emma, Rachel's voice was small. Why didn't you tell us you owned this house outright? You never asked about my finances. You observed my lifestyle and decided it indicated failure rather than different priorities. But you drive that old Honda and shop at Target, Mom protested. Because I prefer investing in appreciating assets over luxury cars and designer clothes. Different priorities, not economic failure. Derek calculated on his phone. Emma, if you bought this for $385,000 cash and your improvements increased values, what's your net worth? I shrugged. Comfortable enough to live according to my values rather than others' expectations. Dad sat heavily in my restored armchair. Emma, we had no idea about your success. We thought you needed family support. I need family respect. Support would involve asking about my actual life instead of assuming you understand based on surface observations. Rachel was crying. Emma, I'm so sorry. I thought we all thought you were struggling. You thought I was unsuccessful because I chose substance over status symbols. You saw my Target clothes and concluded I couldn't afford better, when I actually choose investments over image. What happens now? Derek asked quietly. Now you understand your housing crisis isn't my responsibility to solve. You planned 3 children without ensuring adequate housing, then decided my life's work should accommodate your poor planning. Mom tried once more. Emma, surely family should help each other. Family should help through honest communication and mutual respect. Not by assuming the quiet sister owes the dramatic sister her life's work. Rachel wiped her tears. Emma, is there anything we can do to repair this? Accept that my choices weren't mistakes requiring your intervention. My house, career, priorities, all intentional decisions that created the stability you want to appropriate. The twins returned, Madison tugging Rachel's sleeve. Mommy, when can we paint our rooms? Rachel knelt to their level. Sweethearts, we're not moving to Aunt Emma's house. We need to find our own special place. But we like it here, Mason protested. I know, baby. But this is Aunt Emma's house and she worked very hard to make it beautiful. As my family gathered their measuring equipment and abandoned dreams, preparing to leave my house as they'd found it, I reflected on the difference between success and its appearance. They'd spent years pitying my choices while I quietly built something substantial. Tonight, they'd learned that the family member they'd dismissed had been the most successful all along. The back row relative had owned the entire theater.